Hello YouTube, SentinalhMC here for episode 18 of my RotaryCraft tutorial series. Like I mentioned in the last video, today we're going to be talking about the solar tower. This will cap off our discussion of the power generators within RotaryCraft, the ones that are in the base mod. After this, we'll have quite a few to talk about that interact with other mods, but this is the last one that's purely RotaryCraft. So, the solar tower is a highly scalable multi-block power generator. It does have quite a few things you got to take into account, quite a few downsides, as all solar power does. First, let's take a look at how to craft the blocks you're going to need. The first block you're going to need, well, you're going to need at least one of these to get started, but you're going to need the solar tower, which forms the basis of well, that's why it's called the solar tower. So the solar tower blocks are crafted quite simply, and they're not very expensive at all, with 3 liquid pipes, 4 base panels, and 2 black ink, or ink sacks. There's multiple types of black ink that you could probably use, or black dye, like dye trees and things like that. So that'll get you the solar tower block, and you're going to need at least 2 of these to get started. The next thing you're going to need are solar mirrors, which are just as important, because without a solar mirror, the solar tower doesn't do anything. So solar mirrors are a bit more expensive, and they're crafted like this, with a mirror, which we'll see how to make in a moment, a gear, 2 base panels, and a circuit board. So, this circuit board does kind of make these rather expensive. So the mirror that you need is crafted quite simply with 3 glass and 3 iron ingots. That gets you a mirror. You can also use silver if you just really are lacking iron, although silver is so much less common than the iron. I can't imagine why you... I mean, the only reason I can see for using silver instead of iron is if you're not planning on doing anything with thermal expansion and things like that. So, yeah. But anyway, iron or silver for the mirror. And now I'll get you these solar mirrors. Now, make sure that there's solar mirrors, because RotaryCraft does have another kind of mirror, which is called the beam mirror, which isn't for this. So yeah, I have something set up over here. The solar tower, if we go into the handbook and take a look at its entry, basically what you do is you build the tower out of tower blocks. Makes sense. And then you surround it with mirrors. Adding more mirrors and adding more tower blocks increases the power output. Quite easy. You got to pump water into it, and the mirrors have to either be touching the tower or touching other mirrors that are touching the tower. All right. And the power output of this is always at 1024 radians per second. All right. And as you add mirrors and tower blocks, the torque goes up, which is what increases your power, but you're always at 1024 radians per second. Of course, since it's solar, it only works in the daytime. Well, it's not technically true. It will produce power at night, but very, very, very little of it, unless you have a massive, massive tower. Maximum power output is obviously at noon, and then as the sun moves through the sky, the solar mirrors themselves will actually turn and face the sun's location, and once the sun gets below a certain point, the output on the tower starts to go down. At night, the output is very, very low unless you have a ridiculously tall tower. You'll see under risks here the risk of igniting flammable blocks. Now, that is true. Once you've added a certain number of mirrors around a solar tower of any height, the amount of solar energy being concentrated in that area is enough to light you on fire, as well as turn any blocks underneath the solar tower into lava. Although it seems, in my experience, it seems to turn it into glass instead. Yeah, that's the thing. So let's build this, and we'll take a look at how the various how you can affect the power output. So the first thing we do, obviously, as well, that power comes out the bottom of this tower, so you're probably going to want to have a bevel gear and take the power out this way, although you might not need to, depending on how you're doing it. So you'll notice that the solar tower holds 4,000 millibuckets of water. I have my first solar tower block placed, and I'm going to place a solar mirror right next to it. Now, when it's touching the tower, you'll notice it starts to rotate. If I don't touch the tower, it's not doing anything, because it's not connected. It needs to be touching the tower. But as soon as I place that mirror, and it's now connected to the tower. I can place this mirror connected to that mirror, and it also rotates. It's also connected to the tower. So that's pretty cool. So they do connect to the tower via each other, which is what lets you build concentric rings of mirrors. Now you'll notice that there's no power coming out of this. Let's make sure it's new. There's no power coming out of this right now. And if I hit it with the angular transducer, it tells me that I have 1 mirror and 0 active tower pieces. That's because the first tower block does not count. It doesn't count towards your power output. It's just where the water tank is. So you got to have at least 2 blocks in order to get any power. And we see right here, we're currently getting 4 Newton meters of torque, but since it's at the 1 kiloradian, we're getting 4 kilowatts of power out of this. Obviously, this isn't very useful. We're going to want more out of it. So with our 2 solar towers here, let's take a look at what happens when we add additional mirrors or when we add additional tower blocks. So with only 2 tower blocks, every additional mirror is going to add 2 Newton meters of torque. Okay? That's pretty simple. Alright? But probably not, the best thing. You might not think that's so great. But once we put another tower block on top, we have now doubled the base torque. Okay? And now, every time we place a mirror, we're actually getting 4 extra Newton meters of torque. So the tower blocks act as a multiplier, and these mirrors seem to be additive, and I hope that's right. I'm sure Becky will correct me if I'm wrong, but that seems to be how it works. Mirrors add and towers multiply. So let's cut this back down to 1 mirror, so we're still at 8. And now if we add another one, remember now we've essentially got 3. Right now we've got 3 active blocks, and we've got 2 active blocks and 1 inactive block. Now we're producing 8 Newton meters of torque. If I add another one, you'll see that we now have the 3 active towers, and we now have 16 Newton meters of torque. So for the first couple of tower blocks you add, it will double the torque every time. And now we're up to the output of a steam engine, albeit at a very low torque and a higher speed. But we're at 16 kilowatts, which is the 1 mirror and the 4 tower blocks, because the first one doesn't count. Now if we add another tower block, you'll notice that nothing happened. The power didn't go up. That's because as you add tower blocks, the number of tower blocks that you need to add to double the torque again increases. So I just added 1 more tower block and nothing happened. If I add a second one, now we've doubled the torque again. Alright? So the number of blocks you need goes up. And now if I place another one, it doesn't do anything. If I place 2, it still doesn't do anything. I actually have to place 4 in order to double it again. Now we're up to 64 Newton meters. And if I want to double that again, 1, 2, 3, 4, nothing happened. I have to add 8. 5, 6, 7, and 8. And now we're up to 128 Newton meters. Alright? So the number of tower blocks that you need in order to double the torque goes up exponentially. You're going to need more and more tower blocks. Let's chop it back down to, let's see here. 32. Okay. So a pretty good starting tower would probably be this. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tower blocks, and we're at 32 Newton meters with 1 mirror. Now if we add another mirror, we've added, what's 48 and minus 32? Something like that. But anyway, we're now adding more torque every mirror, which is pretty nice. So now with 3 mirrors, we're up to 65 kilowatts, which is the output of a gas engine. So you can see this thing can very quickly scale up, but the requirement of resources does go up quite a bit. Now, you can take these mirrors and you can attach them to either of these bottom blocks here. So I would recommend actually attaching the mirrors to the second block, because then your water tank pipe doesn't get in the way. So we've got 1, 2, 3. I'm going to add 4, 5, 6, and 7. I found that 7 mirrors keeps the power numbers even with the other generators. So now we're up to, oh, it's getting darker. See, it's going down. Get back to noon. Now we're at 131 kilowatts, which is half the output of a performance engine. If I add the 8th one to complete the circle, we get into sort of this odd power value, which can't be evenly split. down. And if you use gearboxes on non-even amounts of power that can't be divided out evenly, then the mod seems to round it down if you get too low, so you end up losing power. So I just like to keep the power at a number that is easily divisible, all the way down to by even numbers. 128 newton-meters torque at the moment. Now, the number of blocks you can add to this, I think, scales infinitely. I'm not sure, but from what I've read on the wiki, people are saying that the maximum tower size is 34. So we've currently got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So let me go ahead and 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34. Now we have 34 tower blocks, so that tower is pretty darn massive, but we still only got 7 mirrors. However, we're currently producing 1 megawatt. 1024 newton meters at 1024 radians per second, with a whole bunch of tower blocks. That's 34. Now the wiki says that's the most, but what you can glean from this is that if you've got the resources to build a whole bunch of these solar towers, because they're really not that expensive, if you've got the resources to build a ton of these things, then you could go ahead and preemptively build a 34 block tall tower with only a couple of mirrors and have a sizable amount of power. Of course, the cost of this does end up adding up to, again, to quite a bit of steel, which is what pretty much most of the things in RotaryCraft end up costing. Now let's talk about the solar mirrors a bit more, because we can see now that we're adding quite a bit of torque with each additional mirror. So you're going to want to have a nice balance between the two of these things, but there is an issue when it comes to these mirrors, and the issue really is an issue of performance. Every single one of these mirrors it has an animation, and it animates and it turns, and it's really, really cool, but it does end up causing lag if you've got a ton of these things. So you're going to want to be careful, because your specifications on your computer are going to determine how many of these you can actually have around a tower before you are lagged to all heck. So let me just build some circles of these. Actually, let's talk about how many we've got here. So we've currently got 8 and then 9. So we've currently got 17 mirrors. If I increase the number of mirrors to a specific number, so I got 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. Now I'm on fire. At 23 mirrors, I'm not on fire. At 24 mirrors, I am on fire. So 24 mirrors around a single tower is the number of mirrors that will start setting you on fire if you get close, which can be a problem if you're still building the tower. Because now you're being set on fire whenever you get close, so you're going to need some sort of fire protection, or you're going to need to just not get close to this thing. And it can be quite dangerous, so be very careful with it. If I chop a mirror off of this, so we're back within our safe zone. If you don't want to have to deal with any of the negative effects, 23 mirrors with a 34 tall tower will give you 3.5 megawatts, which is pretty a substantial amount of power, and it'll do that forever as long as you're at noon. As it goes, if we enable dusk and set it to dusk, power output went down. If we hit it with the angular transducer, we see that we're currently at 60% efficiency. We've got our 26 mirrors and 33 active tower pieces. Actually, maybe they meant 34 active pieces. So let's go up to 34 active pieces, and we'll see if that increases the power. I don't really know if it did or not, but you're going to need to experiment with this. So you can see that it's currently going down, the efficiency, because it's dark. If we set it to midnight, which is when it's at its darkest, we can see that we're currently at 16% efficiency. We're still producing power, and with this number of tower blocks and mirrors, we're actually still producing, half a megawatt, which is actually, pretty respectable when considering we're in the dead of night. And then if we set it to dawn, you can see that we're back up to 66%. And then we set it back to noon, and I'm going to get rid of these, set it to noon, and then we're back up at 100%. Now, the efficiency of this does go down for every block. If one of your mirrors no longer has access to sky, we can see the efficiency just went down to 96.2, and if we do this again, we can see that, and nope, hit it with the transducer, we're down to 92.3. So the angular transducer will help you to diagnose any issues you're having with your solar tower, because it'll tell you how many of these, it'll tell you if your efficiency is under 100% and it's in the middle of noon, you know that the view of the sky is being occluded to some of these mirrors. Now let's take a look at something that happens when you put a ton of mirrors around here. We know that we get light on fire, but there are other negative things that occur when you get just a whole bunch of mirrors placed around your solar tower. Okay, so then we've got currently 3 concentric, well, they're not perfect circles, but we got 3 concentric, basically, rings of mirrors at the moment. We're currently producing almost 6 megawatts at 5760 newton meters of torque, which is pretty nice. If we keep adding mirrors, we will eventually get to the point where we will basically, there we go, we just glassed everything underneath the solar tower. I don't know if this is a mod interaction or something, because the people on the wiki for RotaryCraft were saying that it actually is supposed to turn the blocks into lava, and they were also saying that it's supposed to get rid of pipes. Maybe that was changed in the recent versions of RotaryCraft because it was a bit too destructive, because you literally wouldn't be able to have the thing running with this number because it would destroy the pipe, which wouldn't be very good. Now we're up to 88.126 megawatts, and if I check my frame rate, we're currently at 21 frames per second, and if I keep adding just crazy numbers of mirrors here, and just keep adding on to mirrors, and more and more and more mirrors, I'm just adding them in all different places. You can see you don't have to form circles with these things, as long as they're touching other mirrors. If I pull this out now, I'm still at 23 frames per second, 22, 23. I've got a really good rig, but if you just keep adding mirrors and keep adding mirrors and keep adding mirrors, especially if you're on a server that already doesn't have a terribly good you already don't get a terribly good frame rate, then you can eventually end up lagging yourself out. Especially if you're on a server, a gigantic solar tower could end up lagging other people out. See, now we're down to 19 to 20. We've gone down 3 or 4 FPS. So eventually these solar mirrors will start to cause you to lag because of all the animation. See, while they were animating, we dropped down to 17. So let me set this to midnight. Actually, let me set it to dusk, because at dusk it seems to be when the mirrors rotate fully into their sort of not completely surrounding the thing, and as they rotate, we're currently at 21 frames per second, because not all of the mirrors are moving. The lag seems to only take hold when the mirrors are animating for obvious reasons, but once all these mirrors get into their position, we're going to swap it back to noon. Every single mirror is going to start animating, and we're going to see what that does to our frame rate. So now it is currently noon. We are going to hit, we're going to hit noon, and our frame rate is dropping down to 16, 18, 17. So we have taken a hit to our FPS. Now, as some of them stop turning, the FPS is going to go back to normal. So be very careful with the solar tower, especially if you're on a server, because you could end up lagging the thing out. With too many mirrors. If you want to avoid that, you could just build multiple solar towers. The tower blocks themselves, and I'm on fire now, the tower blocks themselves don't contribute to lag, obviously, because they don't actually have any animation. So if you're on a lower end machine and you really have to be careful with FPS lag, it might be best for you to just build towers that have a decent number of these things, but not get too carried away. Find your own happy medium between the resource costs, the power output, and the performance. Obviously, if you have a really good computer, you don't really, or even just probably a pretty decent one that can run Minecraft with some decent things, you're probably not going to have too much of a problem. I think the only time you're really going to have a problem with lag on a consistent basis when it comes to the solar tower is if you're also running things like a high-res texture pack and shaders, and anything that you're running in addition to this that is going to impact your frame rate would probably exacerbate the frame rate impact that the solar tower would have on you. Yeah, so just bear that in mind. Now there is one more thing to talk about with the solar tower, is that what the handbook says for these solar mirrors is that if players... Oh, it just broke. Okay, there we go. Maybe I have to jump on it several times to break. Okay, so the solar mirrors can break if heavy things fall on them, either players or slimes, according to the handbook. Let me swap into, let me grab myself a pickaxe, and then we're going to swap into survival. Or, you know what? I think let me grab a mirror, because a lot of things in RotaryCraft can be repaired by using their constituent components. Okay, there we go. We fixed it. So if your mirror does break, if something jumps on it, okay, like that. Funnily enough, when I was falling from a much higher height earlier, they weren't breaking, but now that I'm just jumping, they are breaking. So be very, very careful. You can just make a mirror and stick it back on top. Okay, so just like if your gearboxes get damaged, you can use a gear of the same material to fix it. So if the mirror breaks, just craft a mirror and put it back on the base. You don't have to recraft the entire thing, which is quite nice because that means you don't have to use another circuit. Anyway, I don't want this video to go on too long. That's the solar tower. Excuse me. It can be quite powerful, although it does require quite a bit of investment of resources and infrastructure to build this thing up. It's, you know, completely scalable. Just remember that as you build it taller, you will need more of these blocks to gain a power increase. So find your happy medium. The solar tower can be quite useful for powering things that you want to run all the time, although at nighttime that might go down depending on the power requirements. Although in the next episode I am going to talk about one of the a system that I've set up that I've used to try and mitigate the downtime on something that's solar powered. So in the next episode we are going to talk about the Magnetostatic Engine, the Rotational Dynamo, and the interaction with thermal expansion. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for the next one. I'm SentinalhMC, and I'm signing out.